The throne room of the Valdrine Empire stretched like a cathedral of crystalline darkness, its vaulted ceilings disappearing into shadows that seemed to swallow light itself. Empress Zarathul sat upon her obsidian throne, her four eyes glowing with an amber intensity that had made countless diplomats and warlords avert their gaze in terror. Her chitinous exoskeleton gleamed like polished onyx, and the neural crown atop her elongated skull pulsed with bioluminescent authority. Before her stood the human. He was unremarkable by the standards of the galaxy's warrior races. No towering height like the Krell Battle Kings. No armored hide like the Thorian Berserkers. No psychic amplifiers like the Mentari priests. Just a man in a simple, gray diplomatic uniform, hands clasped behind his back, standing at parade rest. And he was looking directly at her. "You dare." Zarathul's voice resonated through the chamber, a frequency that could shatter bone in lesser species. The assembled court of nobles and military commanders trembled, their own multifaceted eyes immediately dropping to the floor. To meet the Empress's gaze was to invite death. It was known. It was law. It had been so for 10,000 cycles. The human didn't flinch. His brown eyes, so strangely singular, so impossibly simple, remained fixed on hers. "Ambassador Marcus Chun of Earth," she hissed, rising from her throne. Her full height was impressive, nearly 3 meters of predatory grace. "Look at me again, and you're dead. Do you understand? I will have your head mounted in my collection before this day's cycle ends." "I understand, Your Imperial Majesty," Marcus replied, his voice calm and measured. "And yet, I must respectfully continue to look at you while we speak. It's how my people show respect." A collective gasp rippled through the court. Several nobles clutched at their thorax ridges in shock. Commander Vexlar, the Empress's chief military advisor, made a chittering sound of disbelief. Zarathul's neck ridges flared violet with rage. "Respect? You show respect by defying our most sacred law? Every species in this empire knows that to meet the imperial gaze is to challenge for the throne itself. You are either suicidally brave or monumentally ignorant. Perhaps a bit of both," Marcus said, and impossibly, there was the hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "But I'm here to negotiate humanity's entry into your empire. And where I come from, if you can't look someone in the eye when you're talking to them, the deal is already dead." For a moment, the throne room was silent except for the low hum of the gravity stabilizers. Then Zarathul began to laugh, a sound like grinding metal that made several courtiers flee the chamber entirely. "You amuse me, human. Very well. You have one solar rotation to present your species' case for why I should allow you into my empire rather than simply taking your worlds by force. Speak your piece. But know this, every moment you continue to meet my eyes, you are courting death." "Understood, Your Majesty." Marcus withdrew a small data crystal from his uniform. "May I approach the throne?" The audacity. Zarathul waved a clawed hand in permission, curious despite herself. This human was either the bravest creature she had ever encountered or the most foolish. Perhaps she would keep his head after all, as a conversation piece. Marcus walked forward with steady steps, never breaking eye contact. He placed the crystal on the reading pedestal near the throne and activated it. Holographic data began to scroll through the air: population statistics, technological assessments, military capabilities. Humanity numbers approximately 42 billion across 17 colonies. Marcus began, his eyes never leaving hers as he gestured to the data. "We're not the strongest species militarily. We don't have the most advanced technology. We don't live the longest or breed the fastest. Then why should I not simply crush you?" Zarathul leaned forward, studying this strange creature who continued to meet her gaze as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. "Because we have something your empire needs desperately, though you may not realize it yet." Marcus's expression grew serious. "We have the ability to look each other in the eye." "Explain yourself." "Your Majesty, I've studied the history of the Valdrine Empire extensively during my journey here. 10,000 years of conquest and expansion. Hundreds of species integrated into your realm. And in all that time, how many genuine innovations have emerged from within your empire?" Zarathul's neural crown pulsed dangerously. "We have advanced considerably. Our weapons are unmatched. Our fleets are stagnant." Marcus interrupted, and several guards reached for their pulse rifles. Your weapons technology has barely evolved in 3,000 years. Your ship designs are iterations on ancient templates. Your administrative systems are calcified, and I believe I know why." He gestured to the cowering nobles around the chamber. "No one in your empire can look at each other directly, especially not upward through the ranks. Your entire social structure is built on averting gazes, on submission through broken eye contact. How can you have genuine debate? How can you challenge bad ideas? How can innovation flourish when everyone is literally looking away from problems?" The throne room had gone deathly quiet. Zarathul felt something unfamiliar stirring in her neural cortex. Uncertainty. "You speak dangerous words, human." "I speak true words, Your Majesty. And you know it, or you would have had me killed already." Marcus took a step closer, his eyes still locked on hers. "Humanity has a saying, 2 heads are better than 1. We solve problems by looking at each other, by confronting ideas directly, by challenging and debating, and sometimes arguing until we find better solutions. Your empire has forgotten how to do this. And you believe your tiny species can teach us." Zarathul's tone was scornful, but there was a crack in her certainty. "I believe we can remind you what you've lost. Your own species once looked at each other, didn't they? Before the imperial system was established. Before the hierarchy became absolute. How did this human know that? The ancient texts were sealed in the deepest archives, the forgotten histories of a time before the empire, when the Valdrine were just another species struggling to survive on their homeworld." "You've done your research," Zarathul said slowly. "I have, and I found something interesting in those old records. The Valdrine used to have a word, Thelvara. It meant meeting of minds through meeting of eyes. It was considered the highest form of respect, of partnership. You didn't avoid each other's gazes. You sought them out." Zarathul felt something she hadn't experienced in decades, genuine surprise. "That word has been lost for millennia. How could you possibly?" "Because it matters," Marcus said softly. "Because understanding the people you're dealing with matters. Because looking at each other, really looking, is how trust is built." For the first time in her reign, Zarathul found herself unable to maintain her gaze. She looked away, down at her clawed hands, and felt the weight of 10,000 years of tradition pressing on her shoulders. "You make a compelling argument, Ambassador Chen. But you still have not explained why I should accept your species into my empire rather than subjugating you." "Because," Marcus said, and she could hear the smile in his voice again, "you need someone who will look you in the eye and tell you when you're wrong. Every empire, every leader, every person needs that. Without it, you don't grow. You don't evolve. You stagnate and eventually collapse." Zarathul looked back up at him, meeting those strange, singular brown eyes. "And humanity would provide this service? We would be your loyal subjects, Your Majesty. We would follow imperial law and contribute to imperial prosperity. But yes, we would also be the species that looks you in the eye. That asks the difficult questions. That challenges the comfortable lies. A dangerous proposition. The most valuable things usually are." The Empress rose to her full height and stepped down from her throne, approaching the human. Her guards tensed, but she waved them back. She stood before Marcus, towering over him, her 4 eyes blazing with amber light. "Look at me," she commanded. "I am Your Majesty. No, truly look, as your people do. Show me this Thelvara you speak of." Marcus took a breath and held her gaze, not with defiance or challenge, but with openness, with honesty, with respect that didn't require submission. And for the first time in 10,000 years, Empress Zarathul of the Valdrine Empire truly saw someone seeing her in return. In that moment, something shifted. Not just in her, but in the entire structure of the empire. A crack in the edifice of absolute authority. A window opening in a room that had been sealed for millennia. "Commander Vexlar," she said, not taking her eyes from Marcus. "Yes, Your Majesty?" The commander's voice was uncertain. "Look at me." A pause. "Your Majesty, that is a command. Look at me." Slowly, hesitantly, Commander Vexlar raised his eyes to meet hers. She saw fear there. Yes, but also something else. Relief. A burden lifting. "How long have you believed our weapons development program was inefficient?" she asked him. The commander's mandibles clicked in shock. Your Majesty, I have concerns, but you would never express them because you cannot look at me while doing so. Because to meet my gaze is to challenge me. So your concerns, which might be valid, are never heard. And our weapons remain inadequate. She turned back to Marcus. You have opened my eyes, Ambassador Chun. Quite literally. A ripple of something, was it laughter? Passed through the court. Nervous, uncertain, but there. Humanity will be accepted into the Valdrine Empire, Zarathul announced, her voice carrying through the chamber. But not as a conquered species. As an integrated species. You will retain your autonomy and your customs. And in exchange, you will serve as imperial observers, those who may meet the eyes of any imperial citizen, of any rank, and speak truth without fear of death. Marcus bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that didn't break their eye contact. Your Majesty does us great honor. No, Ambassador, you have done us a great service. You have reminded us of what we lost when we decided that power required isolation, that authority demanded submission, that strength meant others must look away. She turned to address her court, her voice ringing with an authority that was somehow both fiercer and gentler than before. From this day forward, let it be known throughout the Empire, humans may meet any gaze they choose. And perhaps, in time, we will all remember how to look at each other again. Truly look, as we once did, as we were meant to do. Later, after the formal ceremonies had concluded and the court had dispersed in confused excitement, Zarathul found herself alone with Marcus on one of the palace balconies, looking out over the glittering capital city. You took a terrible risk today, she said. I could have killed you with a thought. I know, Marcus replied, standing beside her, looking out over the same vista. But sometimes the greatest risks bring the greatest rewards. Is that another human saying? It is. Zarathul turned to look at him, and he turned to look at her. Two beings from different worlds, different biologies, different histories, meeting each other's gaze in the ancient way, the forgotten way, the right way. Tell me, Ambassador Chun, when you look at me, what do you see? Marcus considered the question seriously. I see someone who has carried an enormous burden for a very long time. Someone who has been isolated by their own power. Someone who was brave enough to change when shown a different path. He paused. And someone who I think will be remembered not just as a conqueror, but as a liberator. Zarathul felt her neural crown pulse with an emotion she couldn't quite name. You see all that? I do. Because I'm looking at you. Really looking. They stood there together as the twin suns set over the capital, casting long shadows across the empire. An empire that had just begun to change in ways neither of them could fully comprehend. But they would face those changes together. Eye to eye. As equals. As it should be as it always should have been. Humanity had come to the stars not with the biggest guns or the fastest ships or the most advanced technology. They had come with something simpler and more powerful, the willingness to look each other in the eye, to see and be seen, to offer and accept respect without submission. And in doing so, they had reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten, that true strength doesn't require others to look away. True strength meets every gaze unflinchingly and without fear. This was humanity's gift to the stars. Not conquest, not domination, but connection. And as word spread throughout the Valdrine Empire of the humans who could meet the Empress's gaze and live, something began to change. Slowly at first, then with gathering momentum. People began looking at each other again. Conversations became dialogues instead of monologues. Ideas were challenged, debated, refined. Innovation began to flow again through the veins of the empire. All because one human had refused to look away. All because one empress had been brave enough to look back, and the galaxy would never be the same again.